Today we're going to conquer our fear of the blank page by using some simple but effective techniques to get us started on a journal page. Welcome to Junk Journal Snacks, your bite-sized inspiration for playing in your junk journal. It's Barbara from Vienna, Austria. So today I'm going to play in this beautiful journal I received from my dear friend Honey. I will link Honey's Instagram below, but as always, I have to mention she does not sell these kind of journals. So I am super lucky that I was able to get this one from her. She has become a lot more chubby, which is a lot of fun, I think. So a lot of these pages I've already started pre-decorating, but I still have a few that are quite blank. So let's deal with that. For example, I have this one right here at the end of my journal. I want this page to have more of a vintage feel. So I'm going to take some vintage papers, but you can do this with other papers as well. They don't have to be vintage to do what I'm doing. So I chose a few here, and you can see they have different colors. They have different fonts, which will make the very simple background I'm going to create very interesting. So I could combine any of these to give us a special effect, but I think I am going to use these two. And I was contemplating a lot which one I should put on top and which one on the bottom, because what we're going to do is to adhere one of them to our blank page, and then the one that we'll choose to put on top, we will tear pieces out to make the one from underneath peek through. So that's a technique anybody can do. So you could do this with any kind of book page. You could do it with printables. You could do it with scrapbooking paper. So lots of options. I really liked the insides of these here. I love the bold font here. So I really had a hard time deciding, do I want this on the bottom so that these parts peek through, and then have this on top, which is a German-English dictionary page, or will I do it the other way around, where I have this on the bottom and have some of these words peeking out. For example, I have a few nice ones here, like hope. If you're interested in German, the word is Hoffnung. It also says Erwartung, which actually means expectation. We have to believe, which means Glauben. To encourage, ermutigen. So those would all be kind of nice words to peek through if I were to put this one on top. Really, really tough decision. Both would work really well. But my final decision is to put this one on the background. You can see here it's already quite torn because it's a really flimsy vintage paper, but it doesn't matter. We don't want anything perfect in our junk journal anyway. So my first step is to make sure this fits on my page. So I'm going to have to trim that a little bit on the top and the bottom. And when dealing with very flimsy paper like this, it's always better to tear with a ruler rather than trying to trim it with your paper trimmer. The next question we need to ask ourselves is, what kind of glue do we use to adhere this? Knowing which glue to use for what is really like a whole science. And I can totally understand as a beginner that it's so overwhelming. You don't know what to use for what. And sometimes I'm still unsure of what would be my best option. So what I want to make sure for this page, first of all, is that the paper is not going to warp. So I don't want to add any glue that is water-based, because that will make my paper warp. What you could probably get away with is using a glue stick, not my preferred option. First of all, because glue sticks usually don't hold over many years. But also, again, when you have a flimsy paper like this, you're very likely to tear your paper when you apply the glue. I would not use something like this either, like the Beacon 3-in-1 or in Europe, the Collal glue. This would not warp your paper, but this can bleed through thin paper, especially if it's vintage paper like this. So again, I would not use this. So what I'm going to use is my matte gel by Liquitex. This will not make my paper warp. It will give me a matte finish and it's easy to spread. But I would highly encourage you to experiment with the glues that you already have at home. Maybe not with special papers that you want to make beautiful journal pages with, but with scrap papers of various types to see how your glue is going to react. So I'm just going to spread this all over my page. I want to make sure that everything is covered, and then I can just lay my page on top, smooth over it with my fingers. And I want to make sure that my corners are not going to come up, unless that's the look you want, but I just want to avoid the tearing. There's definitely something to be said about edges coming up. I like that look a lot, but when it's thin and flimsy paper like this, it's just going to keep tearing, and that's not what I want to happen here. So you can see I'm also going over it, at least on the edges. So I quickly dried this with my heat gun. I can't see where the gel is and where there isn't any. Looks completely the same, and more importantly, you see there is no warping, neither on the front nor the back. Of course, this on its own is already a beautiful background and the simplest way you can get rid of the fear of the blank page, because now you don't have a blank page anymore. You could do some beautiful collaging on this. But we're going to take it one step further and add our second paper here. And of course, we're not going to glue this down, but first we're going to tear some holes. So if I would have had this underneath, I would have obviously torn holes in here to show these words that I mentioned before, like hope and believe and encourage. But since I'm having this on top, why don't we try to get rid of some of the words that are not so great, like to shoot or shooting. I don't need that on my page. So let's use that to tear a hole to reveal what's underneath. So I'll just tear into here and get rid of that nasty word. Okay, so there's no more words I absolutely need to get rid of. So now I can go ahead and take into consideration more what's underneath. What do I want showing through? So I definitely want some of this bigger font to show through. So I'll tear a hole here. Look how cool that looks. I love it. So I think as long as you have a big difference in font or in color, you will have a pretty cool effect. And how about down here somewhere? Like we could make this here show through. I love it. Let's maybe put one here. You just make as many as you feel your page needs. Make sure that if you use a text underneath, obviously you don't want any nasty text showing through. That kind of defeats the purpose of getting rid of any unwanted words on the top. Maybe one small one down here. There isn't any text here, so maybe we'll do one down here instead. I also really love the option of using something like a sewing paper. I mean, look how cool that looks. That's amazing too. So play around with patterns you might have, or as I said, different colored papers, different scripts, different languages. If you wanted to, if your paper is maybe a little bit more sturdy, you could of course distress the edges here, but I don't even want to do that. I want to leave it in this original state and just glue that down. This paper here is a little more sturdy, so I am fine leaving the corners in a way that they are not completely glued down, because this I think adds to the vintage look in this case. And if some of the parts tear off with time, I don't care. It's a background. See, I can even do this a little bit on purpose. Maybe glue this a little bit, otherwise that will definitely fall off very soon. Once it's dry, we could maybe even highlight the words that we want to stand out a little bit by just, I don't know, circling them. So I have the hope here. That will draw attention to that. And we have to believe. You could even leave the page as it is. I think it's gorgeous this way already, but we could of course add something else on top. The first thing that I think of when I see the word hope is flowers for some reason. I don't know, flowers give me hope somehow. I have this beautiful vintage flower book. As you can see, I've been using it quite a bit. I found this at my flea market. I bought it specifically to use the images. I'll show you the information here in case you want to try to find something like this. And there are two images in particular that I thought might work for this page. One is this one here on the right. And the other one is this one here. It might be too big, I'm not quite sure. All the images are absolutely gorgeous. Great for fussy cutting. It's been a really long time since I've used these kinds of images. Yep. So I've cut them both out, so let's see which one we like better. So there's this one. It's not as big as I thought it would seem on the page. I think it would go really well actually. Really like that one. The other option is this yellow one, which we could either put like smack in the middle. We could put it like more on the right side. No, don't like that as much. Or maybe more on the left side. That's a tough choice. I really like both of these. I think I'll go for this one. I could easily just glue this down with a regular craft glue or whatever by putting it on the back side, but I have my matte gel here and I'm just going to use that. And once that's dry, I'm going to finish it off with some watered down white gesso. And how about some gold splatters as well. Once it's dried, this is what we have. And you see some of these white gesso splatters have turned into craters simply by not letting them dry 100% and then taking a kitchen towel and firmly pressing onto the gesso, which will then leave you the outside where it has already bonded with the paper, and it will take away the inside, which was not completely dry yet. And I love these kind of craters so much. And the added bonus to a technique like this is, especially if you have used a rather thin journal page, it has now strengthened this page a lot as well. I think this is a great option for when you don't have a lot of time, but you do want to do something creative in your journal, or when you kind of feel low energy and you don't want to get out a whole lot of supplies or put a whole collage together, but it's still a very satisfying feeling that you have created a beautiful page in your journal. And next time, let's try this using some more modern papers and see how completely different that might look. Love you guys. Mwah, mwah.